Greetings everyone, it's Anna. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to be discussing all of the science fiction and fantasy books I plan on reading this year. Because I had basically come out of a reading slump last year, I was kind of reading whatever. No real intention to the books I was picking up, which means that I didn't really get through a really good chunk of my TBR. But this year, okay, we're reading with intention. All of these books are ones that have kind of been floating around. I've sort of been interested in picking up. Never really got around to reading past the first book, but we're changing that this year, okay? We're getting through these books. I'm going to start off with the book I'm currently reading, which is Dune by Frank Herbert. Now, when I first heard of this book, I thought it was a fantasy. It is not. It is a sci-fi book. I feel like I'm still getting into the plot, and I can't lie. I did consider DNFing this book when I was maybe like 50 to 60 pages through, but I often threaten that a lot and I never do. I never DNF. I really have to hate the book in order for me to do that. But once I pushed through, I did find that I was enjoying this book, which is why I want to complete the series or at least give it a go. Now, this book is centered around a family from the House Atreides, which is, I guess, one of many powerful families within this world. And they have been charged by their emperor to go and look after this one planet where this resource is mined called spice. And what I'm getting from this book is that there's going to be a lot of political intrigue, political maneuvering, backstabbing, all of that kind of stuff. Now, done well, I love me a bit of political intrigue, and I want to see if this book does that well, because this is so well loved and it's such a classic within the science fiction genre that I really hope that it does live up to the hype. The next book is one that is a classic, again, within the fantasy genre. And yes, it is The Lord of the Rings. Yes, I have not read this series yet. And yes, I'm going to make it my mission to actually get around to reading it this year. It is a travesty that I have not read it. I don't know why I have never read it. It is one that is kind of dear to my heart because one teacher, we all have that one teacher that like got us into reading. And I had a teacher who used to read excerpts from, I don't know which book it was. It was either The Hobbit or one of the Lord of the Rings books that he would read excerpts from every time we did well. And it was like our little reward. And he would do like the Gollum voice. I just have such good memories around this series that it's quite a shock. I never picked it up. I don't know. Maybe I was intimidated, which is weird. Okay, I know, as someone who has read many a big chunky fantasy book, I don't really feel like I need to give a synopsis. We all know what The Lord of the Rings is about. It's just a shame that I haven't read it yet, but we're going to do it this year. Don't you worry, mark my words. This next one, I don't know if it's going to be a little bit controversial. However, I have a lot of thoughts about it. It is the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I have actually read this book. I read The Final Empire last year. I didn't love it, you guys. I know. This series is so well loved by everybody. And I don't know. Maybe it was the hype. And maybe it's the fact that I tried to read it twice before many years and it put me into reading slump those two times. Maybe it was coincidence. I don't think it was. I don't know. I liked the world building. I liked the magic system. I thought the character work was awful. I will discuss in a bit more detail in my best and worst of 2024. I guess that's a bit of a spoiler for that video. I was in two minds about whether or not I should finish this series, but what ultimately has pushed me into finishing it is the fact that I actually own it. I don't know if you can see up there. I own all the other two books in this series. And so because I own them, I figured I should maybe finish the other two to get a good overview of what people think. Maybe, because I think this is his first book. All right, correct me if I'm wrong. This might be the first book he ever wrote or published. I don't know. And it feels like it. Okay. It feels like it. So maybe the other two books in the series will be an improvement on the series, or it might be the case where if I didn't enjoy the first book, I might not enjoy the rest. I don't know. So I'm going to finish those because I own it. I bought them. They're there. And I'm going to hopefully have a well-rounded opinion of the series. But I'm going into the rest of the books with low expectations, because I had them too high the last time. I don't have a physical copy of the next one. It is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I believe this is just a duology, so it should be nice and easy to get through this year. Now, I never really had any intention of really starting this series. Like, I've kind of been interested, kind of sort of, but never really had the motivation to get stuck into this series. And then I finished the Six of Crows duology this year or last year, And it solidified the fact that I'm going to read her entire backlist. She solidified herself as an author who I am going to be instantly picking up and reading all of her books when I finish those. Because if I'm being very frank with you, when I started The Six of Crows, I didn't love that one. But I got onto The Crooked Kingdom, loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'm someone who loves the original trilogy, and I'd heard you either love one or the other. I love both, just not so much Six of Crows. From what I know of the premise of this book, we're following a character called Alex Stern. She gets a full ride scholarship to an Ivy League university. So this book is a dark academia sort of theme. And then I think there's horror, secret societies, she sees ghosts, all that kind of stuff. Now, some of those aspects are not things that I usually would go for in a book. But like I said, Leigh Bardugo has solidified herself as someone who I'm going to pick up her books. I think from what I've heard, the reception of this series has been a bit mixed. So I don't really know. I'm going to go into it with low expectations, which is what I did when I went into the Six of Crows duology. And I was pleasantly surprised. So we'll see. I'm hoping. One can only hope that they enjoy it, but we will have to see. This next one I don't have a copy of, but I will attempt to procure one at some point this year. It's Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio. I have to be very honest with you. This is going to be a booktube, book talk made me do it, because honestly, I don't really know what this book is about. I believe it is a sci-fi. We're following a character who goes to other planets and, I don't know, does stuff. No idea. I don't know. I just know the girlies love it. And that's enough for me, because I haven't really heard bad things about this, which could be, I don't know, it could be good, it could be bad, I don't know. I won't know. But I'm so intrigued by why people love it so much. It is a space opera, which I don't mind a space opera. I like stuff happening up there. I don't know if this is another one where like bite me in the ass because everyone loved it and I hated it. Because I'm not trying to be a contrarian, okay? I want to love it the same way you all love it. But if you have read it, please let me know, because the synopsis that I've read online, I don't really feel like it gives me much of what the book is about, which might be a good thing. Maybe it's good for me to go into this a little bit blind. I don't know, but this is definitely an internet made me pick it up book because you love it so much, okay? I'm intrigued, so I'm going to get around to reading it. The Assassin's Apprentice has been on my TBR for as long as I can remember, and I think it's high time I gave it a go. Now, I'm pretty sure I own a copy of it on my Kindle, so no excuse for me not reading it. This is part of the Farthia trilogy, which I think is part of a wider book series. So I think there's like initial trilogy, but there might be like 9 or so books in the entire series as a whole. Okay. And I hear people say that you can read the series in different order, but I'm going to read it in chronological order. That's ideally how I would like to read it, because that's just how my mind works. We are following Fitz, who is, I think, the illegitimate son of a king, but he can't take the throne. So he then trains to become an assassin. And then it's all about his adventures that he has as an assassin. I've heard that this is going to leave you emotionally wrought and broken. I don't know. But this is one, again, that people really love, and I'm hoping I love it as much as you all do. The next book on my list is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu, which is book 1 in the Dandelion Dynasty. This was heavily recommended to me personally by a booktube mutual who told me that I must read it because I would love it. So I'm going to give it a go. Now, from what I understand, it isn't a super heavy fantasy read, so I'm going to adjust expectations, because whenever I pick up books I think are going to be like super fantasy and they're not, it kind of feels a bit like a bait and switch to me. So I'm just going to go in there expecting not very much fantasy and see how we go. Now, from what I understand, this is going to be about 2 friends who overthrow an emperor, and after the emperor's overthrown, they kind of go to war with each other and they split ways. So it's a breakup of a friendship, I think. I don't know too much about this one, if I'm being really honest. The synopsis feels a little bit vague, but that's what I gleaned from the synopsis that I read. One thing that I did hear a lot about this is that it has a lot of political intrigue. Like I said, done well, I live for that. That's my jam. And if this goes the way I think it's going to go, or at the very least, the way I hope it goes, this is going to be it. Because I love when political intrigue and political factions and political warring is done well. And I think this is what I've heard this book does really, really well. So let's see how well the political intrigue is done in this book, because done well, chef's kiss. This next one is one that I've had for a while. It is The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke. And we are following, I think, a couple main characters. One of the characters in this is a child, or was a child soldier, and now they have been charged with trying to dampen down a rebellion that's taking place in their homeland. And then I think another character is somebody who I think was royalty, and so they're trying to get their throne back. I don't know if those two characters are going to be love interests as well, because I do hear that it is a sapphic read as well. It might do. Like a little bit of romance, I don't mind. Again, this is one that I've heard nothing but good things about, and I think it's a travesty that I haven't started it yet, but we're going to rectify that this year. And lastly, I have Son of the Storm by Sue Davies Ogunbowa, which is a West African inspired fantasy. From what I understand of the plot, the main character is a scholar who loves to dig into things that he shouldn't really be digging into, and he sees someone wielding magic that should have been long dead, shouldn't be able to use, and I think that sets him off on some sort of journey. I do enjoy books where the main characters go on these sort of quests and journeys, and that's kind of what I'm hoping it is. We'll have to see. I'm going to read it this year, finally. I am not 100% sure if this is a duology or a trilogy. I know the second book has come out, so I will have to double check if it is a trilogy. Either way, I'm going to be going through this series. So folks, those are all of the series that I'm going to make a very conscious effort to get through this year. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you read them? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think I'm going to hate it? Love it? Would love to know. That's it from me. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.